Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today I'm going to be looking at another homebrew, and it's on the Atari 2600, and that is Ladybug. Now, it's weird that this game never actually made it onto the Atari 2600. I mean, Coleco put out a lot of the classic games that they had, well, the same ones almost that they had on the ColecoVision. They eventually ported them over to the Atari or the Intellivision and stuff like that. And this game did make it onto the Intellivision, it did make it onto the ColecoVision, but it never made it onto the Atari 2600. So that was kind of odd that it just kind of got forgotten. I mean, I don't get it. Like, there's a lot of games that are just like it, like Mousetrap and stuff that made it on there. So, why not? But, yeah, apparently it took a while before the homebrew scene took over and was able to create the game. Apparently the game was listed in a catalog back in the day, as in it's going to exist, but then it just never happened. So perhaps it's just the timing of it, perhaps it's when that infamous crash was happening, who knows. Anyways, now we got it. You can see it's a copyright date of 2006, way after the Atari's life cycle. And this looks pretty neat. I mean, the Ladybug, you can make it out. Everything looks pretty cool. So let's give this game a whirl. There we go. Really cool sound. Like it's got the sound effects going on there. It does have that the dots kind of like in Pac-Man, you know, where they're not really dots. I guess they're not really supposed to be dots. They're like flowers or something. You're supposed to be in a garden eating flowers and stuff, and you're avoiding the insects. But yeah, so you don't really have dots. You got the lines, but that's just the way the Atari, you know, the way it draws the lines and all that stuff, the scan lines. It's just the way they had to make it. But really, I mean, I don't care. Dots, rectangles, lines. You gotta eat something. But so far, this is actually a really decent port of the game. I mean, this would have been amazing if this came out by Coleco. And their titles were hit and miss. I mean, Venture was amazing in my opinion. I love Venture on the Intellivision. And, you know, even on the Atari, Venture was pretty good. Oh, it's getting faster. What else did Coleco make? They made Zaxxon. That one was kind of a failure on the Atari and on the Intellivision. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the angle correct. The you know, that kind of what do they call it? Isometric view it's supposed to be in. They kind of made it more like River Raid, where you're kind of going straight up. So that was like a failure of, you know, the ColecoVision there, or not the ColecoVision, but the Coleco product. And of course the Donkey Kong games didn't really look good on the Atari or the Intellivision for that matter. I mean, I often say it's just hit a skull. I often say it's one of my favorite games, but it's only because of, you know, my own reasoning. I mean, I was never crazy about the Coleco Donkey Kong on the Atari, but again, there's been some homebrews that have corrected that. Part 3, Carrots. I mean, they did a good job. They're showing all the different stages. It's not just like, you know, it's the cutscenes and stuff as well. This is really well done. You can get this game off the Atari Age website. You go to the AtariAge.com, you can find it there. There's information on it. I'm actually quite impressed. And, you know, this just shows you the capabilities that the Atari 2600 did have, and could have had. And, you know, of course there's also talk that, you know, maybe Coleco intentionally made some of their games bad, just to sell their ColecoVision system. I've talked about that before. I don't buy that story. And I know there's a lot of articles, even from the programmers who worked on the games, who say that that's not real, like that's not true. But I mean, I can see how people would think that, because oftentimes the ColecoVision version was better, but you also have to remember the ColecoVision was a much better system as far as its power of what it can do. during those days when the Coleco came out, it was probably the one console system, not computer, but console system, that pumped out games that looked very similar to what you would play in the arcade. Atari 2600 didn't have that. I mean, you had a kind of an experience. Like, you know, if they put this out, I would say this would be pretty close to what you would be expecting from a home console. But unfortunately, they didn't hit that mark with Pac-Man. They didn't hit that mark on, you know, even Mousetrap to some degree on the Atari 2600. Even though I like it, it's lacking in a lot of different, you know, for a lot of different reasons. It's very simple, but very simple game. But it's just there's just some parts of it that are just lacking. Not getting all the bonuses here. I'm just trying to stay alive. Ooh, parsley. Give me some parsley. Yeah, I really think that this is a good port. This is just well done job. And you know, the question is though, even if Coleco at the time or whoever would have been responsible for this game to appear on the Atari 2600, would it have been this good? That would be a good question to ask. I mean, this obviously had a lot of care taken into it. The programmer spent some time and really flushed this game out. But would it have been this good? And you look at, say, whoops, you look at, say, Donkey Kong, and you say, well, they didn't do a really good job. So chances are they probably wouldn't have done this quality of work. But I just think that, you know, they probably would have given it some degree of playability. It wouldn't match this. And that's what we're seeing, obviously, when you look at these homebrews, is that they take more time. They have the time and the budget. I mean, you also have to think back in the day that the chipsets and all that stuff to make the cartridges were expensive. The programmers were under pressure to use as little memory as possible to create these games. They were given unrealistic time frames to get the game completed and on the shelf for Christmas time. You know, there was a lot riding, right? So, plus they didn't have the assemblers and all that stuff that they have today to actually design these games. They had to do it, like, literally the hard way, like coding right from scratch. So you kind of have to have some kind of level of, you know, understanding when it comes to comparing these homebrews to modern, or to the original classic games that came out during the 80s. But yeah, I really enjoy this. I think I would have loved to have this. And I didn't have Ladybug on any system back then. I didn't have it on my Intellivision. I didn't have it on... I never owned a ColecoVision when I was a kid, and I didn't have that on the Commodore 64. In fact, I didn't play Ladybug until probably when I first got my Coleco late in the day, like in the mid-90s, I think is when I got my ColecoVision. And I eventually picked up a copy of Ladybug, and it was probably the first time ever playing it. It was on the ColecoVision. I don't think I ever played this in the arcade. I'm pretty certain I didn't. Not that I would have had any problem with it. It wouldn't have been a game I would have, you know, gravitated towards. I probably would have gone towards more of the Donkey Kong and what other games? Oh no, ran into there. Oh. Anyways, yeah, this is Ladybug for the Atari 2600. Strangely, this took forever to come out, but we're glad we got it. Head over to the Atari Age website. If you haven't been there, if you like Atari, you need to go there. And you can find this game in there. It's a homebrew. And I believe you can buy it. I think they have it for sale. I'm not 100% on that, but go check it out. Check the Atari 2600 tab. Check the store. You'll find it. And see what you think of the game. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Hope you subscribe to my channel. Leave some comments down below. Talk to you later.